Right now, somewhere in your house or tucked in the back of a relative's closet, there might be an old barometer collecting dust that is worth a serious amount of money. Most people walk right past these. They look decorative, maybe a little old-fashioned, and unless you know what to look for, it is almost impossible to tell the difference between one worth $20 and one worth several thousand. That is exactly what we are going to fix today. I have put together 10 barometers, ranked from the least valuable to the most, and by the time we get to number 1, you will know exactly what to look for. Stay with me for that one especially, because it is the kind of thing that turns up in estate sales for next to nothing every single week. Number 10 on our list is the standard aneroid barometer in a plain brass case, no maker's name, no secondary dial, no vernier scale. These show up constantly at antique shops, garage sales, and on the shelves of people who inherited them from a grandparent and genuinely have no idea what they have. Here is the thing though, most of them are worth very little. A plain aneroid in a featureless case with no identifying marks typically brings in around $15 to $30 on the open resale market. I am not going to inflate this one, but what matters here is knowing whether yours is actually the plain version or whether it is hiding something. Flip it over and look at the back of the brass case. A quality instrument from the late 1800s or early 1900s will almost always have a maker's stamp, a patent number, or a city of origin pressed or engraved into the metal. If the back is completely bare and the brass feels thin and light, you are likely looking at a decorative reproduction, and those are worth almost nothing to collectors. If you inherited a brass barometer and the back is stamped with anything at all, keep reading, because the next items on this list are going to be very relevant to you. If you thought that one was surprising, wait for this. Number 9 is the aneroid barometer made by Short and Mason of London. Now, Short and Mason was a real and highly respected British scientific instrument maker, operating from the late 1800s well into the 20th century. Their aneroid barometers were built to professional standards, and many of them ended up in the homes of ship captains, surveyors, and serious weather enthusiasts. A Short and Mason barometer in decent condition, with the original dial face intact and the needle mechanism still responsive, can be worth anywhere from $60 to $120, depending on the specific model and condition. The physical check here is the dial face itself. Short and Mason instruments typically feature very precise, finely printed graduation markings and the company name in clean serif lettering directly on the dial. If the dial face looks crisp and the lettering is etched or printed rather than painted on with a heavy hand, that is a good sign. These were used instruments, so do not be put off by minor wear. A grandfather who worked near the water or spent time at sea was exactly the kind of person who would have owned one of these. Number 8. Let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a barometer with a long, narrow, vertical tube filled with a reddish or amber liquid, mounted on a wooden panel, with no circular dial at all? That is what is called a storm glass, or in some circles, a Fitzroy storm glass, named after Admiral Robert Fitzroy, the man who founded what eventually became the British Meteorological Office. Fitzroy storm glasses were produced throughout the mid to late 1800s, and genuine period examples, those with the original wooden mounting board, the original glass tube, and a legible printed label carrying Fitzroy's name or a reference to the Royal Navy, can bring in between $80 and $150. The physical verification here is the label. Modern reproductions of these are everywhere, and they are usually sold as decorative items. The label on a genuine period piece will show age-appropriate browning at the edges and slight ink fading. The wood panel will have natural darkening and grain variation, not the uniform staining of modern pine. If yours has a crisp, clean-edged label on perfectly smooth wood, it is almost certainly a reproduction. But if the wood shows genuine age and the label feels like it has been there a long time, it is worth finding out more. Ever wonder why some of these look almost identical, but one is worth 10 times more? That is exactly the situation with number 7, the wheel barometer, also called the banjo barometer, because of its distinctive round dial mounted on a long, narrow body. These were made throughout the 1800s by dozens of British and Italian craftsmen, and the shape is so iconic that reproductions have been sold as decor for decades. A plain banjo barometer with no maker's name and a mass-produced look is worth around $30 to $50. But a signed example, One carrying the name of a verifiable instrument maker on the dial face is a completely different story. Names to look for include Negretti and Zambra, a major London scientific instrument house operating from 1850 onwards, and J. Casertelli of Manchester, who made fine wheel barometers through much of the late 1800s. A Negretti and Zambra signed wheel barometer in good working order, with the original thermometer mounted on the stem and the hygrometer intact, can be worth between $150 and $250. The name will be printed directly on the dial, usually in small text near the center. If you have a banjo barometer and you have never looked closely at that dial, now is the time. The next one catches a lot of people off guard. Number 6 is the stick barometer or cistern barometer, which is exactly what it sounds like. A long, straight tube, usually enclosed in a wooden case, with a scale printed or engraved alongside it. These were the scientific standard before aneroid barometers became widespread, and a good one is worth real money. A plain stick barometer with no maker's name and a damaged scale typically sells for around $40 to $70. But a stick barometer with a signed ivory or boxwood scale and a verifiable English maker's name from the 1700s or early 1800s is where values jump considerably. The physical check on this one involves two things together. First, look for the maker's name engraved directly onto the scale itself, not just printed on paper stuck behind glass, but cut into the material. Second, run your finger along the outer wooden case. Genuine 18th century examples were made in mahogany or walnut with hand-cut joints you can feel at the corners, not the smooth, seamless joins of machine-cut reproductions. A barometer matching both of those details could be worth between $300 and $500, sometimes more, depending on the maker. Now, if you want to drop a like on this one, I would really appreciate it. It helps more people find this kind of information, and honestly, it takes about 2 seconds. Number 5 is the aneroid barometer made by Negretti and Zambra. I mentioned their name on the wheel barometer, but their aneroid instruments deserve their own entry because collectors treat them differently. Negretti and Zambra supplied scientific instruments to the Royal Observatory and to the British military, and their aneroid barometers were made to a higher mechanical standard than most contemporary competitors. A Negretti and Zambra aneroid in a good brass case, with the original beveled glass face and the blue and black altitude scale visible on the dial, can bring in between $200 and $350. The mechanical check here is the needle response. Hold the barometer firmly, tap the glass face very lightly with one finger, and watch the needle. On a quality instrument, the needle will move slightly and then settle back precisely. If it does not move at all, the mechanism may be seized, which affects value significantly. If you inherited a brass aneroid and the name on the dial starts with an N, it is worth looking very closely at those exact letters. If you thought that one was interesting, the next one is even more specific. Number 4 is the Sympisometer, a type of barometer that most people have genuinely never heard of. The Sympisometer was invented in 1817 by Alexander Addy of Edinburgh and was used extensively on British naval and merchant vessels through the 1830s and 40s before mercury barometers became standard at sea. It uses a column of linseed oil tinted with an alkanet dye, giving the liquid a distinctive reddish-orange color, and the scale is printed on a curved arm that travels with the float. Genuine Sympisometers are rare. Most collectors will never see one in person. An authentic example with the original oil, the original curved scale arm, and the maker's name, typically Alexander Addy and Son, or a naval instrument house such as Spencer, Browning, and Rust, can be worth between $400 and $800 at specialist auction. The physical test here is the liquid itself. In a genuine period example, the oil will have darkened somewhat from oxidation over the decades, turning a deeper amber than the original bright red. If the liquid inside looks uniformly bright and clean, it has likely been refilled, which is not necessarily disqualifying, but is a detail that affects provenance. If you have one of these and you are not sure what you are looking at, keep it safe and do not try to clean or drain it. Number 3, and this one comes up in estate sales more than you would expect. The aneroid barometer made by the Tychos Instrument Company, full name Taylor Instrument Companies, which was based out of Rochester, New York. Taylor and Tychos were major American producers of meteorological instruments from the late 1800s through the mid-20th century, and their higher-end aneroid barometers, particularly those made before 1940 for professional use, are increasingly sought after by American collectors who want a domestic rather than British instrument. A Tycho's aneroid in a solid brass case with the original black and white dial, the dual range altitude scale, and the brass bezel in good condition can be worth between $150 and $250. These were often kept in farm offices, on boats, and in the homes of people who took weather seriously. The identification check here is the serial number stamped on the back of the case. Taylor and Tycho's instruments made before approximately 1945 will carry a serial number in a specific format, a letter prefix followed by a 5-digit number. If yours matches that format and the condition is good, you have something the American market actively wants. The weight of it will tell you something before you even look at the dial. Number 2 on this list is the marine mercury barometer in its original gimbaled case. These were the instruments used aboard working ships, designed to hang on a swiveling bracket so that the mercury column would remain accurate even in rough seas. They are long, heavy instruments, usually housed in mahogany or teak, with a protective glazed front panel and a cistern at the base. A genuine marine mercury barometer in its original case, with an intact mercury column, a legible vernier scale, and a signed dial from a verifiable maker, is worth between $750 and $1,500, and exceptional examples from major makers have sold for considerably more at specialist maritime auctions. The names to look for here are Kelvin and James White of Glasgow, Elliott Brothers of London, and Negretti and Zambra again, who were major suppliers to the Admiralty. The physical test on this one is the mercury itself. Tilt the instrument very gently and listen. Genuine mercury will produce a sharp, clean knock against the top of the tube, a sound that is completely unlike anything else. If you have one of these and you can hear that knock, you have a working instrument. At this level, it is absolutely worth having it looked at by a professional before you do anything with it. These are not items to clean, repair, or attempt to restore without expert guidance. A lot of them travel through families, passed down from a relative who worked at sea or near a port, and many people have no idea what they are sitting on. And now we are at number 1. This is the one I told you to stay for. The banjo barometer signed by an Italian immigrant maker working in England between approximately 1780 and 1850. This period produced some of the finest decorative scientific instruments ever made for domestic use, and the craftsmen behind them were almost entirely Italian families who emigrated to Britain and established themselves as instrument makers in London, Bristol, and Edinburgh. Names that matter enormously here include Quaglio, Ronchetti, Maspoli, and Corti. These craftsmen produced wheel barometers in mahogany, rosewood, and satinwood cases, often with inlaid shell or brass stringing, a hygrometer at the top, a circular thermometer on the stem, a spirit-level bubble in the center, and the maker's name signed in flowing script directly on the main dial. A fine example with a verified maker's name from this period, all original components present, the thermometer intact, the hygrometer functional, and the case in honest, original condition rather than refinished, can be worth anywhere between $1,200 and $4,000. The higher end of that range is for pieces where the case inlay is intact and the maker's documented in the historical record. The combination check here is 2 things together. The signature on the dial must be consistent in style with documented examples of that maker, and the case joinery must show hand-cut dovetails at the corners visible under a flashlight. Machine-cut joins mean a later or reproduction piece. Both details together in the right combination put you in a completely different tier of value. These barometers hung in the entrance halls and parlors of Georgian and Regency homes, and they have been passing through families ever since. If someone in your family owned a house built before 1900, there is a real chance something like this is out there. So there is your list. From the plain decorative aneroid worth a handful of dollars all the way up to a signed Italian immigrant barometer that could genuinely change what you think your family history is worth. If you enjoyed this one, hit subscribe to the channel and you will get more of these every week. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you have a barometer somewhere in your house right now? Tell me where it came from, whose it was, and whether you have ever had it looked at. I read every single one of those stories, and sometimes they lead to something really remarkable. Take a closer look at what you already own. You might be sitting on more than you think.